On this episode of Big Sky Now, we discuss Week 10 inside the Big Sky Conference, where we saw every single road team win last Saturday. Then we jump to Week 11, where we only have 3 weeks left of conference football, so these teams are trying to make sure they get a postseason spot. Before we start, I'd like to thank M&C Tires for sponsoring this podcast. Let's not waste any time and get right to it. Welcome back, everyone, to our weekly episode of Big Sky Now. I am your host, Luke Schmit. Today, I am joined by Daily Interlake sports editor Fritz Neighbor, Daily Interlake sports reporter John Allen, Coeur d'Alene Press sports editor Mark Nelke, and Columbia Basin Herald sports reporter Mike Maynard. Guys, let's jump right into Week 10. We saw all road teams win this past week on Friday night and during the Saturday slate. Did not expect that coming at all, and there are some upsets we definitely need to jump into. So let's start with the Friday night game, and let's go to Mark first. Mark, Idaho wins in overtime over Northern Arizona. What was your takeaway in that one?
I guess, again, for the second straight week, how much better Idaho is when they have Joshua Wood than when they don't, and to a lesser extent when they have Eli Cummings healthy and stuff like that. They seem like they just play with a lot more confidence, and then it almost spreads to the defense too. I was at the Eastern game, and you could kind of see them, the body language, and they seemed like they just struggled without their starting quarterback, and they didn't play with as much energy. But it seemed like just having Joshua Wood out there and makes a bigger difference than it probably should. That said, that what they're up 26-7 and give up the lead and almost lose it, but credit to them. They come back, get the tying field goal at the gun and force overtime and then win it in overtime. So good for them. Matthias McLean from Priest River gets a sack to force a Northern Arizona into a field goal instead of keeping the drive going. So that helped. And then Idaho scores in 2 plays, and thank you very much. But yeah, they almost gave that game away, which kind of like giving treats away on Halloween. So they did play on Halloween. Okay. Anyway, because Northern Arizona, everybody was kind of on their bandwagon, and they're still a good team, but I think they're still a kind of a middle of the road Big Sky team where they capable of winning a game like that, but also capable of losing a game like that. So good for Idaho. Their playoff hopes are still alive.
Their hopes are still alive. And yeah, I thought this actually was a big game because both are now 2-3 in the Big Sky. If Northern Arizona was able to get that win, they flipped to 3-2, and they're not a bad football team at all. But Idaho, like you said, when Joshua Wood is out there, definitely a different team. And Elijah Cummings, 106 yards, averaging 8.8 yards a carry. So I got to give a shout out to Cummings. Thought he run the ball very well and was very effective. Let's go to our next game and head over on to Fritz. Fritz, Montana finally won in Ogden. I believe it's been about 10 plus years since they've won there. What were your thoughts on their impressive victory?
Well, it just came kind of workmanlike, didn't it? I mean, they've had some clunkers down there. They've taken good teams down there and lost to a good team. They've taken middle of the road teams down there and lost via upset. This one was over pretty early. I mean, they just were really dominant at the beginning. Showed a lot of the depth they have as far as weapons go. Blake Bohannon had by far his best game. He only had 3 catches, but he went over 100. I think 132. Brooks Davis and Drew Deck had nice games on a day when maybe Weaver was concentrating on Michael Wortham, as most teams should. Wortham's among the top all-purpose players in the FCS. He had 51 all-purpose yards on Saturday, which probably his low point for the season. And it seemed like the Grizzlies maybe eased up on the gas a little bit in the second half. They're up 31-7. I think you saw a lot of some 2s and 3s get some action. Eli Gillen got 120 some yards rushing, but he had just 12 carries. You saw Jake Jensen and Luke Flowers get snaps. Mele Ifanati got some carries. I thought IOP maybe had a so-so game, and you look at the end, he had 296 and 2 touchdowns and overcame an early pick. And I don't know, it was just workmanlike, and I think you'll never get Bobby Houck to admit he's looking ahead, but I think there was a concerted effort to keep kids healthy. for at least another week. They got 3 games left. There's no bye on the schedule unless you count week 0 for the Grizz. And, they've had some really good teams that just couldn't go at the end of the season before. 2019 comes to mind. So, just workmanlike. Cade Boyd and Mike Harper with the turnovers, Clay Oven with 6 tackles. And they got it done. We should mention they don't play Weber every year because the conference got so big, 12 or 13 teams. So when you say it's been 13 years since they won down there, that's true. It's also true that they lost 5 of 6 in Ogden. That's also true. But and in fact, Weber had won, I think, 6 out of 12. So good win for the Grizz. Wasn't really surprised how it went though.
Yeah, I think you put it best, Fritz. Workmanlike was what I saw as well, and they're able to take care of business. Montana remains undefeated on the season, and like you said, looking forward, that game in Missoula for the Brawl of the Wild is going to be quite the matchup, as Montana is now ranked 2nd, and Montana State is ranked 3rd. So we're going to have a huge game to cover soon. Can't wait to talk about that in the coming weeks. Speaking of another team that handled business in Montana, it was the Bobcats. John, 55-7. This game was over, not even halfway through it. What were you so impressed with? Maybe it was Lamson, the defense. What jumped out to you?
Yeah, just how dynamic this team is. It seems like every week it's a new person stepping up in the run game. Taco Dowler this week and Justin Lamson picking it out in the pass game. Dowler had 5 catches for 138 yards. Lamson 331 through the air on 16 completions for 3 touchdowns. So, and then this defense, of course, stepping up and making this Northern Colorado team that I've talked so highly about this year, saying that they're not what they used to be, made them look like what they used to be. So, yeah, I mean, Northern Colorado has definitely not been a slouch this season, but Montana State came in there, handled business like they need to, and walked out of there with a commanding victory. And now they get to head back home to face this Weber State team. I also wanted to kind of throw in there, you didn't do the pro shout outs this week. So Montana State fans, Ty Okada got his first career interception in the NFL last night for the Seahawks. So we'll shout out to him as well.
Yes, shout out to Okada, Bobcat. Even seeing him starting is super cool, on those intros they do, and just great representation for the Bobcats. So thank you for reminding me on that one, John. Taco Dowler, I thought 5 receptions, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, probably his best game of the year so far. Also played very well when they played Oregon. But yeah, Montana State, kind of the same thing as Montana, just Bisman-like, taking care of work, and on to another game at home versus Weber they should be able to handle. So things are guiding to a fork in the road in Missoula here soon. Let's go out to Mike with his Eagles losing some momentum this week. Eastern Washington was able to rally a couple wins together, but unfortunately for the Eagles, they lost to Sacramento State 35-13. Mike, just kind of want to get your thoughts on maybe what was different this week compared to what they've been doing successful in the recent weeks.
Yeah, well, I think it was just a bit of coming back down to earth a little bit for the Eagles. Sacramento State, their offense is incredibly explosive, and you knew what they were bringing coming into this game. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to stop it? And when it comes to the run, that certainly was not what they were able to do. They only passed the ball 6 times and for a total of 15 yards, and they got a pick. Which I believe is now 7 consecutive games where the Eagles defense have recorded an interception. So that, I guess there's a positive on that end. And in the second half, they were able to hold Sacramento State to 1 score. They were down 28-13 at halftime. But it looks like Nate Bell going out with an injury kind of made a big difference to a degree. I don't know much about Jake Shackle, but he was sacked 4 times. Whereas Nate Bell, I know, has an incredible ability to escape the pocket, has that instinct to know when it's time to get out of there. I don't know if Jake is pretty mobile in that regard. 10 carries for a net, I guess a gain of 45 in gross, but if you count the sack yards, it's minus 17 yards in net. But yeah, just couldn't really. Looks like they couldn't really get anything going in the run on offense, which makes a big difference for a lot of teams. But Shackle did finish with 24 for 38, 68% completion percentage for 201 yards. Just looks like they just couldn't really punch it in and get it over the line and capture that momentum there. And then once Sacramento State got that last score in the fourth quarter. That probably about sealed the deal for them. But yeah, just I think going forward, they're going to have to really lock in there and see where they can improve. It's going to be interesting see how the Nate Bell situation develops. And I believe I thought Jared Taylor came back last week, but then this week doesn't seem to be involved. So could still be dealing with his injury, and could that might be kind of limiting the momentum that the Eagles have seemed to captured in recent weeks, and that would be really unfortunate. But if they can get some guys back, maybe they could give the Grizz a run for their money this week. But well, remains to be seen.
Remains to be seen, exactly, and we'll talk about that game real soon. What jumped off to me is, Sacramento State, when they played Montana, had over 300 passing yards from Cardell Williams, and like you said, they threw the ball 6 times for only 15 yards. So I'm kind of interested going forward to see if maybe Sacramento State tries to shift to a run-heavy team. Obviously, versus Montana, they were losing at points, but only 6 attempts is pretty shocking. So quite an up and down 2 weeks for Sacramento State, but they do improve to 3-2 in the Big Sky. So they're on the come up a little bit, especially after last week. Since Mike is wearing his Bengals sweatshirt, even though it's the Cincinnati Bengals, we have to jump to the upset of the week and talk about the Idaho State Bengals, or Fritz's Bengals, as we like to say. They pulled off the upset over UC Davis, 38-36, blocked punt, one-hand catch. There was pretty much everything from this game. So I'm going to let Mark kind of just take the floor and tell me what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, Idaho State, as Montana knows, has the offense that can score against good teams, and they were able to do it against Davis. I don't think anybody expected the start of that game that they had, where the first 6 possessions were all touchdowns, and it was like 21-20 after 6 drives, and then teams finally settled down and got some stops. And I think, like Luke said, Idaho State blocked a punt for a touchdown. Second half, they held UC Davis to 3 field goals, and so that kept them in the game. UC Davis, the 3rd field goal, put them ahead, and that's a lot of times what happens to Idaho State. They play a great game and lose at the end, but to their credit, their quarterback Jordan hit Nunnally for a big gain, and that set up a they settled for a 50-yard field goal. It's kind of funny. They had the ball around the 33, and instead of trying to get closer, they ran 2 times into the line, and then the quarterback kept it, and they kicked a 50-yard field goal that cleared by about that much, but that was enough to win, and that took enough time off the clock that UC Davis couldn't get close enough to get a field goal attempt of their own. So yeah, big win for Idaho State. And then there's always, I don't know how much the subplot played into it as far as Cody Hawkins going back where he was the OC, and his dad Dan being the head coach down at UC Davis for 8 years. He was on the sidelines. He's on the staff at ISU. So obviously they recruited a lot of those kids and knew a lot of what UC Davis was going to do. How much that translated on the field to the players, I don't know, but it was good to see. Like I said, Idaho State can score, and this year they can play a little defense. So good for them. The other thought I had about UC Davis was, they were ranked 6th and 4-0 in the league and stuff. But you look at who they played and the teams they played all, other than NAU, they all have losing records. So we don't know. Maybe they're not as good as their record in their ranking, but I don't know. They still had 567 yards of offense. So, and that was kind of the first time I'd seen, Fritz's favorite quarterback, Caden Pinnock, play, and he looks good, like good runner, good, he can throw the ball a little bit, and you kind of worry about a guy that's that small getting, taken out and getting smeared, but that's kind of what they got. And I think they lost their running back too, so we'll see what happens, this week when they come to Idaho. So they had a backup finish the game, and they're already hurt in the secondary. They got the one kid made the interception. It was a pretty good highlight play. He had a soft cast on his right hand. It was kind of like almost like a club, and it was like, that was a pretty good interception for, with 2 hands, but he had a hand and a club, and then he hurt his hand basically tackling Nunnally on that, he reached out and got his foot and hurt
Yeah.
his hand there. So they're banged up, and we'll talk more about, when they come, about them coming to Idaho this week.
Absolutely. And I want to let Fritz talk about his Bengals here, and we'll jump to our last game.
Well, yeah, I mean, my Bengals look good. They do have an offense. Mark hit a couple points I wanted to hit is that, Davis is good and Caden Pinnock is good. He did throw a pick at the end when they still had a little bit of time to maybe get a fourth field goal in the second half and take the lead back. Carter Vargas is the running back that went down. And from what I could tell, that was a non-contact injury. He just had a calf go out on him. And if it is a calf, and I can't really find anything online about it, those things take a while. So we're talking about a Davis team that's lost some really good players, so I don't know if they have the holding power and spoiler alert for our next round of picks, but I think Idaho and Davis this weekend is for a playoff spot. So
I think you're right on the money again, Fritz. I think this UC Davis team on paper for the start of the year now, it's going to be a lot harder for them to get some of these big victories, especially when it's coming down to it. But we will see. They go to Bozeman soon, I think in 2 weeks. So that'll be the ultimate test. If their depth can handle the Bobcats, it's going to be a really tough game. But if they pull that one out, then, maybe be right back on the Aggies train. Let's finish out this week with John. Portland State did it. They finally did it. They got their first win in almost about a year to the date. But let's just not forget about that and appreciate that they won a game inside the Big Sky. So, John, take it away.
Yeah, I first wrote down on here is that they made me eat my words from last week. So I didn't really give them a chance, but this is why I didn't give you an absolute last week. I said it didn't look likely. Anything happens when the game goes down, and DeLon Thompson gets a big shout out this week, going 184 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. Sagapolutele rebounded after, sitting out half the game the week prior. So he had 252 yards through the air, had a touchdown. Cal Poly's offense was good for, 2.5, almost 3 quarters, and then they kind of disappeared until the final minute. Their final 4 possessions were interception, punt, and then they finally scored to make it 40-35. Couldn't recover an onside kick, and it's a little mishap and going off sides and everything there. So ended up just giving Portland State the victory.
Portland State improves to 1-8 on the season. Cal Poly 3-6. I am with you, John. I have to eat my words as well. I did not see them winning a game. I've been saying it all year after the first couple of games I watched of them. But any given Sunday, just like we saw with Idaho State. Or Saturday, excuse me. I'm not talking NFL. Let's jump to next week, week 11. I'm going to start with Mike on this one since we have Eastern Washington and Montana matchup, which were 2 teams playing each other in the playoffs a couple of years ago. The Eagles do have a mountain to climb here, Mike, but tell me how you're feeling about this one. And I know the injury report might not be the best for the Eagles, but let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, if that kind of remains the same for the Eagles, they come in very, very disadvantaged. They're going to need a lot of luck on their side, especially on the defensive side of the ball with the kind of offense that Montana is putting out. Their quarterback is playing really, really solid, 66% completion percentage on the year so far. Has turned the ball over, but doesn't seem frequent. Their running back, Eli Gilman, strong player, and then you got Michael Wortham on the receiving side of the ball. I think any one of these players, if one aspect of the game is not going well, the other could probably step up and take care of business for them. So, the Eagles are gonna have to be really, really sharp on defense and trying to limit both aspects of offense as much as possible. But if the quarterback situation isn't is still kind of shaky. Jake Shako looks like he could really pass the ball pretty well. Maybe they can get something out of him, especially with a week of practice and preparation, something that they can expect now, rather than maybe him coming in middle of the game. Maybe they can make some noise and hang with them for a little bit. But I don't like the Eagles' odds this week coming into that.
Absolutely. And we see Michael Wortham playing his old team. Fritz, what notes do you have on this matchup?
Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Michael shows out on Saturday after an off game last week. They moved Jared Taylor from quarterback to running back, and he had a really good game with 2 touchdowns a couple weeks ago. Then he didn't play against Sac State. You wonder if they might move him back to QB or stick with their number 2 guy that they played with on Saturday in the loss. But since he didn't play last week, I don't know if he's going to be there this week. I don't think Nate Bell's coming back anytime soon. I just don't give Eastern much of a shot. I did watch their game, and I did like a couple players. Isaiah Perez, the transfer from BYU. I was reminded that they have a number 4 legacy number there. That's usually a Washington kid that shows out on defense. So I liked him. And I liked this kid named Reed Sun, which it sounds like all one name, but it's actually 2 names, Reed Sun. And he's an Alaskan native, Wasilla, Alaska, who had 14 tackles in 4 years at Wyoming, and he's got 70 tackles for Eastern, 7th in the league. He had a pick against Sac State. He's a nice player. They need maybe 4 or 5 more Reed Suns, and they have a chance on Saturday.
Yeah, Fritz, it's going to be tough for Eastern. And just like going to the other side of the state, we have another matchup for Montana State that they should be able to take care of. They play Weber State. John, I don't see this one being close as well. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, with how the Bobcats showed up against Northern Colorado, I'd put Northern Colorado slightly ahead of Weber State. And if the Bobcats did that on the road against Northern Colorado, then I'm going to be amazed to see what they can do at home when they take on a Weber State team that Montana a week ago was able to kind of pick apart defensively. They had some big gains on the ground. They had some big pass plays, some busted coverages where, Bohannon got deep and was wide open. So I'm going to be just interested to see what happens with this Montana State team and how they're able to pick them apart as well. And yeah, I just don't see Weber State having much chance to hang with them. But I was impressed with the play of Jalen Record last week. I thought he's a very good receiver out there for Weber State. And if they can get him rolling, they got him 107 yards against Montana. So maybe if they can find ways to get him open on some deep balls, and they could try to hang in there, but it's going to be a tall task.
It's going to be a very tall task. And, we say every Saturday, you never know, can't 100% guarantee. But on this one, Montana State at home, really tough place to play. I don't see Weber State really sticking around. If they can make it a game in the second half, I could see maybe Montana State's been in some blowouts. Maybe some closer games could be tough for Lamson. He hasn't had that pressure just yet. I know they had the South Dakota State game, but other than that, Montana State's really rolling right now, and I like the Bobcats in that one. I'll just talk about the Sacramento State, Portland State game really quick. I do not see the Vikes, unfortunately, going back-to-back wins, especially the way Sacramento State's running the ball. Rodney Hammond, 208 yards last week. I don't expect that usage to stop, especially if it worked so well against Eastern Washington. But like I said, shout out to Portland State for getting a win. Their last win was last year, November 23rd, against Colorado State, or Northern Colorado. My apologies. And so first time in a win, I'm sure it feels really good in that locker room, just, all the weight off the shoulders. And they got a home game this week, so maybe that momentum will carry over for a big upset. But I don't really see it happening. And I think Sacramento State's trying to inch their way closer into a playoff spot, and they need to kind of win out to do that, to get a higher seed. And they have a tough game at UC Davis at the end of the year. So I think Bisman-like is going to be the word for a couple of these teams, trying to make sure that they're just taking care of business, not playing sloppy, special teams playing good. I could see Sacramento State rolling for another win here. Let's go back to Mark and talk more Bengals. That's definitely a team that's exciting to talk about right now. They host Cal Poly after their huge win. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Mark?
Well, based on last week and Idaho State playing at home, you'd think the Bengals would win in a rout. But the way the Big Sky has been this year, well, at least the non-Montana portion of the Big Sky, you just never know what's going to happen from week to week. Idaho State does have a chance to finish 5-3 in the conference if they win out, which may be enough motivation. I don't know if it'd be good enough to get them in the playoffs, but maybe at least get them a look anyway. So, we'll see. So there is some motivation for them. We've spoken highly of Cal Poly on this podcast in recent weeks, and then last week they lose at home to a winless Portland State. So you think, okay, it's an Idaho State route, but given the way the Big Sky's gone, I think this game might be closer than we think. But I think Idaho State, this is a game for them one of the rare ones they'd be favored in. They should be able to take care of business at home.
I agree with you as well. As we were talking before the show, Idaho State might be the most fun or the best 3-6 team, because some weeks they look amazing and some weeks, like you said, it's a drop off in play. So I expect them to win. But then again, as we've seen all season, they're very up and down. Let's get to our next matchup. Let's go back to John here. Northern Colorado travels to Northern Arizona. John, if you just wanted to talk about this game, and then maybe talk to me also about, I know you were big on Pennington, the quarterback for Northern Arizona to start the year. And, what have you seen from him that's maybe not giving him that nod anymore for being one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Sky?
Well, I kind of, as you guys would know, I'm very high on this team before the season started. I just felt like they were going to be able to take that next step. Get out of that mid pack of the Big Sky, like we've talked about. They have the ability to, they have the pieces there for it, and for some reason they just can't seem to win these, some of these bigger games that, like last week against Idaho, where you think that they probably should have come away with a victory. They've kind of reverted back to the way they were last year in that regard, and I really feel like this ends up becoming must win for the rest of the season now for them, just in terms of the playoffs, because they've got 4 losses now in the year, and it's a Northern Colorado team where if they lose this one now, that's a huge devastating loss on the resume. 5 losses, didn't make the playoffs last year. I don't believe any of the teams with 5 losses got in. 4 was right on the edge, and that's where Northern Arizona was in that last little slew of teams that got in. So Pennington, I think, was kind of part of that idea of what made me like this team so much in the preseason, that he was going to take that next step up as a leader with this team. And he's played solid throughout the year, but I just feel like it's still just kind of missing the big game mentality and big game performance that he needs to be an MVP in this league.
Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily played bad. I just don't think, he stepped up to the standard. I agreed with you at the beginning of the season that he could be one of the players at the end of the year that we're talking about is a huge reason why they could have made the playoffs. But I think this is going to come down to these two teams in a must-win situation. Northern Arizona, definitely, if they want to get back on track, get back inside the playoff format, they're going to have to win out, or at least keep all of them close. And if they lose one more, it's going to be tough for me to think that they'll get in. Let's go to our last matchup here. We have UC Davis traveling to Idaho, as we just talked about before. I'll have Mark talk about the game, and then I'll have Fritz give any final thoughts before we get to our picks. So, Mark, Idaho is running into an angry Aggies team after their loss. Do you see the Vandals riding their momentum from last week to defeat UC Davis?
Definitely. I mean, especially playing at home. They're a lot different team at home. The Northern Colorado game notwithstanding, but they're a lot better team at home, and a lot better team with Joshua Wood and Eli Cummings healthy. I think UC Davis has got to be, limping a little bit figuratively and literally without their starting running back, if they don't have him, and they're already, they don't have Rex Connors, and they're kind of beat up in the secondary in other places. And like we talked about before, maybe their 4 wins in Big Sky play against Weber and Cal Poly, NAU, and Northern Colorado. It's not like they went to Missoula and to Bozeman and won there. So maybe they're not quite as good as their rankings, but I mean, they're obviously still a good team. Pinnock is a dual threat, and they still had over 500 yards against Idaho State. So they should, it still should be a good game. You look at Idaho. I was looking at their stretch of last week at NAU, UC Davis, and Sac State, and thinking there's no way they're going to get through that. And they needed to win all 3 of those to even have a chance at the playoffs. And they've already beat NAU. They got a good chance at home against, maybe a banged up UC Davis team. And that kind of, might lead their game at future FBS power Sac State, to determine whether they get in the playoffs. And Then they got Idaho State the next week. So there's still a lot on the line. I think this should be the game of the week, I would think.
I'm with you, Mark. I think it's definitely a game I'll be paying attention to the most. Let's just end it here with Fritz. Fritz, you have any thoughts on this matchup or any other games we touched on?
Well, I just prepared to go into my picks and agree with Mark. Not that he really needed to talk me into it, but the way Idaho played and having their two stallions back in the fold and playing well, I think it's pretty clear that Idaho's a favorite. So I'll pick them over UC Davis. As much as I like Caden Pinnick and I like how the Aggies have played early on, they've missed a couple key players. So I think it's a Vandals day Saturday.
I'm with you, Fritz. I made that pick as well. So might as well get to all the selections. Last week was a little tough week for us. There was a lot of upsets and a lot of road teams that won. But shout out to John and Mark for both getting 3 games right. That was the most. And John stays as the leader, 63 out of 74. So let's hear what you got this week, John.
Oh, I didn't realize that I got that many right last week. I thought I was worse. Well, yeah, I'm going to start off with Montana winning at home over Eastern, and then Montana State taking another big performance against Weber. I'm going to put Sacramento State to end Portland's winning streak, keep it at 1. I'll take Idaho State at home over Cal Poly. That one was tough for me because how well I've talked up Cal Poly sometimes this year, and Idaho State just coming off of a solid performance against UC Davis, as we've mentioned. Cal Poly coming in off the loss. I think the Bengals will continue with that momentum. I'm going to take Northern Arizona to rebound over Northern Colorado. I do think that they absolutely have to have this one. And then I think Idaho is going to defend home field against UC Davis.
Looks like a lot of us are like in Idaho this week after UC Davis lost last week. Fritz, you are at 59 of 74. You still stay in second place this week. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll as I mentioned before, I'll take Idaho over UC Davis. I'll take the Bobcats over Weber. I'll take the Grizz over Eastern. I'll take Sac State over Portland State. NEU over Northern Colorado. And then my Bengals, who swept the Big Set Conference Weekly Awards this week. I think that's number 4 for Sinatra, the field goal kicker this season. I'll take them over Cal Poly.
Awesome, Fritz. Let's go to Mike now. Mike and Mark are both tied 58 out of 74. Mike, you are up, ready to go.
Yeah. I'll take Montana over Eastern, Montana State over Weber State. Give me Sac State over the hottest team in the Big Sky right now. Northern Arizona. I'll take Fritz's Bengals, and I'll actually go UC Davis. They are a good team. I think they could pull it off an upset.
I like it definitely a lot. Let's go to Mark.
All righty. Well, as we remember, Eastern Washington's last trip to the state of Montana didn't go quite the way I thought it would, but it's a new week and stuff like that. So I think this week, Eastern, no, I'm not going to take Eastern. Montana's going to
Like, oh, again.
Okay, Pat McAfee.
Take Montana. Montana's going to have to help to make this game close, and I don't know that they will. So, although it is, especially the Michael Wortham revenge game, so we'll see how that turns out. So, Montana over Eastern, Montana State over Weber State. Take future FBS power Sac State to win in Hillsboro. I'm going to go with the Bengals to beat Cal Poly. I'm going to take Arizona to beat Colorado in the Battle of the Northerns. And I'm going to take the Vandals to beat UC Davis and probably maybe another shootout like they had last week, ISU and UC Davis.
Awesome. And I'll finish up our picks here. I'm at last place still. I need to find my way in. I was maybe thinking you guys were going to all take UC Davis this week, but it looks like we're thinking the same. So I am going to start just saying that. I'm going to take Idaho to defeat the Aggies in the Kibbie Dome. Give me Montana to defeat Eastern Washington. I'm going to pick the Bobcats to remain undefeated in the Big Sky over Weber. I think Sacramento State hands Portland State its 9th loss of the season. Give me Idaho State to ride the momentum over Cal Poly. And I'm going to go with the Lumberjacks to get back on track over Northern Colorado, as we said, in the Battle of the Northerns. But that'll do it this week on Big Sky Now. I just want to thank my panel for always joining on time and doing their research. It means a lot. And thanks to everyone out there listening. If you have any comments or any concerns, feel free to put them in the chat below. And subscribe, share the video. But until next week, we will see you on Big Sky Now.
M&C Tire in Kalispell has been locally owned since 1979. From urban avenues to untamed trails, M&C Tire will help you conquer any terrain. Unleash the power within your ride. Stop into M&C Tire at 1271 North Meridian Road in Kalispell or mnctire.com. M&C Tire, wherever you go, we've got you covered.